Come on in to the Awaken to Yourself podcast, where we discuss how to develop a deeper connection to yourself and therefore manifest that which you desire. My name is Fiona Christie and I'm joined by my co host, Diane Clark Manley. Let's dive into this week's episode. This week, we dig deep into how to become your best detective and why you'd want to. This series, The Life Shift, follows the modules from Fiona's course called The Life Shift with the Internalist Way. It comprises 12 modules which make up your own unique inner guidance system. In last week's episode, we talked about your internal vibration, and today we're looking at the module called Notice. That module is about how to notice exactly what you're attracting into your life, and it gives you some useful tools to intercept the flow before it goes pear-shaped. The first step to noticing life the internalist way is to know the difference between conscious and unconscious noticing. It is this observation which opens a whole new perspective of possibility in your life. Remember, there are no mistakes, only mistakes with an opportunity to realign. I'm flying solo today while Diane takes a wee break with her family. I wanted to talk a little about the difference between conscious and unconscious noticing. So, we unconsciously notice all the time. For example, like when you suddenly realize that you've driven the last 10 Ks and you can't remember any of it. Why? Because your unconscious noticing kicked in and it was keeping track for you. Thank goodness, otherwise you might have crashed. Well, which is kind of like how a lot of people live their life. They live it on autopilot without checking in to take a look beyond the blinkers, like the racehorses have their blinkers on at the side so they can't get distracted, right? That have been shielding their peripheral vision. Conscious noticing is like when you widen your perspective a little. It might be that for a week you write down your observations at different points in your day. What happened, for example, just before the point where you got pissed off with your boss or your partner or something else? What were you thinking just before that? What projections did you make? What didn't you see? What assumptions did you make? What judgments did you make? And the one I love is that saying that goes, whose business were you in when the tide turned? In other words, were you thinking from your perspective or theirs? But don't get me started on that topic because that's a whole other subject entirely. For now, just know that noticing is the first step to change. It might seem insignificant, but you'll learn a little bit more about it in the next slide. Which brings us to the next point, which is that observation is the beginning of change. Observe exactly what you're attracting into your life, good and bad, and then analyze and intercept the energy flow before it goes pear-shaped. God, we've all had those times when we're heading into a conversation and we have all good intentions, but somehow it turns, well, pear-shaped, and you end up saying things you didn't mean. But of course, they are exactly what you meant, just not in the way that you would want to have said it. The foundation of change is becoming a great detective in your own life. Drop the belief that it's scary. Noticing is one of the most incredible teachers if you'll let it be. But you've got to use the brake pedal as well as the gas. Of course, everyone notices, but it's the stopping after the noticing that's where the real magic happens. Because if you care to take the time, you notice the things which you can change. You notice where you're not appreciating all the good that's already there, instead of noticing what doesn't work. I always use story to illustrate a point. And the story I use in the notice module is about how my dad had a fixed idea of the spare bedroom. that it could only be configured in one layout, which was bloody inconvenient because it meant the bed pushed up against the wall. He hadn't stopped to even consider whether anything else was possible. It wasn't until we found that the curtains tucked in behind the bed were mouldy on the back that he was forced to change and notice that, yes, there were other possibilities. You can hear the full story in the notice module, but for now, let's just say that that small thing made a massive difference to the room. It made a difference to me whenever I stayed and to the way that, he felt every time he walked past since he changed it. I used to say I was afraid of change, but one day I realized that I've experienced so much change in my life that I didn't really dislike change. It was just the projection of the change that caused the fear. Once I stopped to analyze and notice, I realized that the belief I don't like change was the story. But once I stopped to dig underneath to see what was hidden beneath the story, I discovered that I don't dislike change. What I dislike was the projection of what the change might mean. And I think I mentioned this term in the previous podcast episode, which is the acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. See, when we are fearful about something, unless, of course, there's a lion in the room or something, then it's because we're projecting about what might happen in the future. And the other thing that I wanted to mention here is that, so the method that I've developed called the BS shift, that looks at these first two things too. First of all, what's your story? And then what's hidden underneath? Then we need to interrupt the pattern. And that's why I say stop to notice. And then we need to stick to just the facts. And then we need to step into the truth of who we really are. And that's an energetic process, but that's another story entirely. So for now, just know that noticing is one of the most incredible gifts that you can give to yourself, to the change that you want to experience in your life. You can read more about it in the module, but I'm going to dig underneath this a little bit further in the slides to come. Stay tuned. And here's the next point about noticing. Your RAS, which is short for reticular activating system, which is in the frontal part of the brain, is your filter through which you see the world around you. Notice that which you have not yet seen. Let's talk about Raz. Oh, that reminds me of that song which goes, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Well, we're not going to talk about sex. Well, not that topic here anyway, but we are going to talk about the filter and the good and bad. It's said that we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, depending on who you listen to. Every day. Can you imagine? Oh my God, I can't imagine it. That's so many thoughts. And of course, we can't possibly give all of those thoughts our full attention. So what we do is we filter out what's important to us, and that's the RAS job, right? So the next question then is, where do you place your attention? That's part of noticing. Notice where you place your focus. Is it on what you want or what you don't want? Most people think they focus on what they want, but when we look further into the language they use, we realize that they're not. So here's a good example. I don't want to get sick. What are you focusing on? Not wanting something and getting sick. Your RAS is your filter through which you see the world around you. Notice that which you have not yet seen. So you might want to observe your language this week, but we'll talk more about that in the thought module, which comes next. So instead of I don't want to focus on getting sick or whatever, what do you want to focus on? Being healthy. So focus on that. Micro noticing leads to macro change. It can make the world of difference with just a tiny tweak in a change in perspective. Micro noticing leads to macro change. It can make the world of difference with just a tiny tweak to a change in perspective? Well, people often view change as a massive, gigantic experiences in life. I view it differently. All of those big changes had micro tasks and experiences within them. So then it's the same with noticing. Notice the little things which annoy you. I love the story about the roast lamb. Mary and Jack were newlyweds, and Mary was cooking her first Sunday roast for Jack. He was watching her and noticed that she cut the end of the leg off the lamb before putting it into the pan, and he asked her why she did that. And she answered, I don't know. That's what Mum always did. Ask her. So he phoned her mum, who said, I don't know. Gran always did that. Ask her. So he phoned Gran, who laughed and said, well, we didn't have a pan big enough to take the whole leg of lamb. So I used to cut the end off to fit it in the pan. So be conscious, question and notice. Notice why and why not. I love Byron Katie's The Work. They call her Katie. Anyway, she illustrates a story of a woman who said, I'm too impatient to wait. That woman had waited 30 years in an unhappy marriage, only to finally notice after Katie's clever questioning that she wasn't too impatient to wait. So her thing was, I'm too impatient to wait for men to show their feelings. And, she said, men don't show their feelings, and I'm too impatient to wait. And so Katie says, you're too impatient to wait. Is that true? And of course she said, yes. And Katie said, how long have you been married? And the woman said, 30 years. And Katie said, you're waiting. The woman still didn't get it. The audience laughed at this point. You're waiting. You've been waiting for 30 years. Mm-mm. So, what can you notice this week that's been there all along? I love to say, embrace fascination over fear. Notice if your actions move you closer or further away from that which you desire. What you want is outside your sphere of influence, unless it's not until you stop and notice that your actions, well, and your thoughts and your words too, are taking you further away from what you desire that you have an opportunity to change anything. Like someone who changes job because they have, are experiencing bullying in the workplace, and they say, this time it will be different. But then they change jobs and the same thing follows them. And then they say, oh, it's just this workplace or it's just this person. And then they change jobs again and it follows them again. It's like saying, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I have the job. I'll be happy when I have the partner. I'll be happy when I have the house. I'll be happy when I have lots of money. But it's not actually the thing that causes you, it's not actually that job that causes you the happiness. It's kind of you yearning a way to feel. Anyway, that's another topic. But so notice if your actions move you closer or further away from that which you desire. What you want is outside of your sphere of influence. So, what I mean by that is you can want and want and want, but what you're just acknowledging is that you haven't got it yet. But if you be eternally grateful for what you already have, then you will see more. But that's in another topic, which is thanks. But which is the module called Thanks, which is all about gratitude. But really noticing comes hand in hand with that, because if things aren't working as you want them to do, then notice where you're putting your attention. Are you being grateful for what you already have? Because you won't see what you can't imagine, if you like. I know Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. Feel into what you want. It's so very true, and so does Greg Braden. Like you have to feel the change that you want to see. You have to feel as if it's possible and imagine yourself already there, and that will come with time. So I do have some visualization meditations, if you like, which could help, like if you can feel into the thing that you already want, but notice where you are, do a gap analysis, as they call them. Where are you and where do you want to be? And what's the gap in between? And what's the constant in all of this? The constant is in you. That's why we wanted this podcast to be about you and your change, because you're the only thing you can influence in this world. You're the only thing that you can change. You can't change anyone else. You can only change your perception of um, or your view of something. You can't change the other people. You can't change the outcome, but you can change how you view it. So that first comes with noticing. Let's bring it all together now. So we've been talking about the first step to noticing life the internalist way is to become your best detective in your own life. And it starts with observation. Observe what's working and what's not working without judgment. Then you're in a position to analyze and learn from those lessons to then be able to move forward. So the bullet points are: know the difference between conscious and unconscious noticing. We talked about observation as being the beginning of change. Observe exactly what you're attracting into your life, good and bad, and analyze and intercept the energy flow before it goes pear-shaped. Your RAS is your filter through which you see the world around you. And RAS, remember, stands for Reticular Activating System, and it's at the frontal part of the brain, and its job is to decipher what's most important to you, or filter out what's most important to you. So notice that which you have not yet seen. Micro noticing leads to macro change. Notice if your actions move you closer or further away from that which you desire. What you want is outside your sphere of influence, unless, and that takes us to the topic which we're going to talk about next week. Are you tired of repeating the same old patterns in your life? Do you wish your life had a consistent flow? We've got 3 secrets for you so you can avoid coulda, shoulda, woulda, and I'll be happy when. So claim your free spot at the Life Shift Insights webinar, 3 secrets to attract what you desire in your life. You can watch it at theawakenedguru.com/free webinar the-life-shift. We'll see you there. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Next up, we have episode 3, You Become What You Think About. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye for now.